Okay, I'm here with Brenda Lyttle, who's running for Senate District 8 as a Democrat. And Brenda, what was the exact moment or local issue that made you say, enough is enough, I need to run?
Yes, and actually, Ted, I remember that moment very, very well. I was listening to a broadcast and news report of the 2026 legislative session, and I heard how they had cut education funding, and then the amount of funding they were giving to education, they siloed, like, we'll give you this much money, but it has to go to teacher pay. Well, I am married to a former school administrator, and I knew that was not the right way to handle school funding, because every school is different and needs funding for different things and different purposes. So I knew that was wrong. I knew cutting education funding was wrong, because schools are the center of our communities. And I thought, if you cut education, then you are cutting communities, you are cutting our future. And then at the same time, you're trying to take control over how the money is spent. That's it. I have to be the change that I want to be, and I have to run for the legislature. So that was, I would say that was actually the moment when the property tax issue came up too, that added another layer to my conviction to run. But the moment was school funding.
Thank you. So I know you were on the Laramie County Community College Board for a long time. And tell me about that experience, and tell me how it impacts what you want to accomplish.
That was one of the most valuable experiences of my life. I was on the LCCC board for 16 years. I was elected the first time, and then re-elected 3 times after that. And it was such an honor to serve on that board. And I went through some things on that board that taught me a lot. When I got there, we had a president who was very unpopular, and he was governing the college through something called policy governance, which is a top-down governance model, and allowed him to have a lot of control. When I became chairperson of the board, he saw the writing on the wall and promptly resigned. We had to enter a contract for him to resign, but he resigned. And the outcome of that is we were blessed with the application and hiring of Dr. Joe Schaefer, which has changed the culture of LCCC. He's been in the news, as you know, some today too, and I support his decision. So one of the many things I learned, besides the value of education, is the importance of the culture of those folks that are in leadership at a place like Laramie County Community College, and the difference that that leadership can make in the vision of the college and of the community. The other thing I want to mention that I will never forget about being on the LCCC board is graduation day. And you sit on the stage on graduation day, and you see folks crossing that stage who are the first person in their family that has gotten a college education. And you see their families cheering and their children coming up and hugging them, and the pride of those students and their families that we now have a college graduate in our family. And that person is going to go on to become a nurse, or someone who fixes our computers, or someone who gives you your x-rays at the hospital. That person is going to become a valuable part of our community and their family. And those are the 2 things that I feel like I learned the most at LCCC.
If voters give you 2 minutes on their doorstep, what's the single promise you can guarantee you'll keep?
Well, this is a new subject from the other 2 questions, but the first promise I'm going to say is I'm either going to bring or support legislation that will stop the loophole that allows data centers to build on industrial sites without having to report the community and the population about the impact of those data centers. I can't say I'm anti-data center, but what I can say is I think we as a community need to know the impact of those data centers. And there's a loophole in the law right now that is allowing those data centers to build on industrial sites, and then they don't need to report to the community. That's probably going to be my thing one. And then just to slide in a thing two, I want to be on the education committee so that I can make sure that schools are properly funded.
So finish this sentence in one breath. I'm running because our community deserves.
I'm running because our community deserves representation and leadership that listens, that cares, that is knowledgeable, passionate, and wants to help. And I am that person.
In a time when people are naturally skeptical of politicians, what in your background proves you'll be fighting for working families and keep your promises?
I graduated from law school in 1999 and became a lawyer in 1999. And since I did my swearing in at the Supreme Court, I have spent my career helping working families. I worked as an administrator for the Department of Family Services, where I led the Child Support Enforcement Program, which allowed single parents to get the child support that had been court ordered for them to receive. I also was an administrator for the TANF and SNAP programs and child care subsidies. And so I made sure that working families got the payments and subsidies that they needed for their children and grandchildren. I worked to make sure those payments, child support, TANF, and SNAP payments came on cards. So I worked with JP Morgan Chase and US Bank to make that happen. And then after I left the state, I was a lawyer for National Debt Relief, and I was the Wyoming lawyer for National Debt Relief. I had over 300 clients. And in that capacity, I helped working families resolve their debt issues, usually medical bills or credit card bills that they couldn't pay because of medical problems, medical bills, or because they had lost their jobs. So I helped working families in that way too. Helping families was the reason I went to law school. It's what I've done in my practice of law, and it's what I feel passionate about, and I feel like I have kept my promises in those areas.
Why should every single person in Laramie County have access to affordable, quality health care? And how does medical debt hold back our community?
Well, I'm going to answer the second part of that question first, because I have seen firsthand what that does to our community. There are folks who get injured or become ill, have to go to the hospital, and cannot pay those medical bills. So a couple of different things happen. First of all, of course, the hospital goes after them and sends their bills to collection, which is where somebody like me gets involved in helping someone resolve those bills that go to a collection agency. Sometimes that family has to file bankruptcy. That means the hospital doesn't get paid at all. And they still have to keep their doors open, their doctors paid, their equipment fixed. And so they have to raise their prices for everyone else who has insurance and can pay. That's a problem that affects communities, and it affects our access to health care. Now, why health care is important? Do you remember your parents or your friends saying, as long as you have your health, you have everything, right?
Sure.
That's true. I can spend time with my grandchildren because I am healthy. I can travel because I am healthy. I can work because I am healthy. But I need to have access to health care to remain healthy. I need to be able to go to the doctor when something is wrong and when I become ill. I cannot imagine my children or grandchildren becoming ill and they can't go to the doctor. I cannot imagine that. What would I do? What would any of us do? if we had a family member that we loved and cherished and valued, they could not get the health care that they needed. And what does that do for our spirits and our community? It breaks us down, and we need to have healthy bodies to have healthy lives.